Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. Yang berbahagia Tan Sri Dr. Zeti Aziz, Group Chairman, Permudalan Nasional Berhad PNB, Encik Jalil Rashid, President and Group Chief Executive PNB, ladies and gentlemen of the media. On behalf of Permudalan Nasional Berhad PNB, it is with great pleasure that we welcome you to PNB's first ever virtual media briefing today to announce our performance for the financial year ended 31st December 2019 and the outlook for the year ahead. We will also be unveiling the new strategic plan for 2020 to 2022. I am Aimi Aziz, the head of comms at PNB, and I will be the moderator for today's session. Thank you to the journalists who are tuning in today, and we have received your questions, which we will try our very best to answer within the allocated slot. We will begin our session this afternoon with a presentation by our Group Chairman, Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Dr. Zeti Aziz, on the review of 2019 and the announcement of our new strategic plan. This will then be followed by a presentation by our President and Group Chief Executive, Encik Jalil Rashid, who will take us through the strategic plan, after which we will then proceed to the Q&A session. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to invite our Group Chairman, Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri Dr. Zeti Aziz, to begin today's session. Dipersilakan, Tan Sri.
Thank you. Members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. On behalf of PNB, we hope that you and your families are safe, healthy, and coping well in these challenging circumstances. Thank you for joining in our first ever virtual media briefing for the launch of our 2019 annual report and for our strategic plan for 2020-2022. During this time, when the country has been under the Movement Control Order, or PKP, 97% of the PNB workforce have been working from home. Today, we wanted for this session to happen to essentially update our valued stakeholders on how we are operating during these unprecedented times and to share with you our strategic plans for the future. My presentation will cover the key highlights of PNB's annual report for 2019 before handing over to Encik Jalil, our President and Group Chief Executive, to introduce to you PNB's new strategic plan for the next 3 years. Ladies and gentlemen, 2019 was yet another difficult year. The subdued global growth momentum and an environment of increased uncertainty led to lower performance across most asset classes. Global growth, based on the IMF estimates, had moderated from 3.6% in 2018 to 2.9% in 2019. Volatility in the financial markets intensified as the world grappled with the uncertainties generated by the US-China trade war, Brexit, and the disruptions in the oil market. In this environment, central banks commenced intensifying monetary accommodation. Malaysia was not spared from the effects of these global developments. Our GDP growth slowed from 4.7% in 2018 to 4.3% in 2019. The Malaysian equity market also faced another tough year as it recorded its 5th annual decline in the recent 6 years. During this period, foreign investors were the net sellers in Bursa Malaysia. Notwithstanding these challenges, PNB delivered 3 encouraging outcomes in 2019. Firstly, we sustained a relatively resilient financial performance. Secondly, we made a good progress in the diversification of our assets towards a wider number of asset classes, including into the international financial markets and in our liquidity management. Finally, and equally importantly, we made strides in improving our operational experience for our unit holders. More specifically, our assets under management surpassed the 312 billion ringgit mark in 2019, recording a 4.5 growth from 2018. In 2019, we also recorded a 10.7 billion in net income, which contributed to a 5.4 cent payout per unit for the fixed price fund. This is despite the 6% negative return in the FBM KLCI, and this amounted to a total of 13.3 billion ringgit income distribution to our 14.3 million unit holders in 2019. Since our inception 42 years ago, we have distributed 200 billion ringgit in total payout. This is in line with our central mandate to maintain sustainable returns while paying out yields that are realistic and which reflect the market conditions. During the year, we have gained more ground in our portfolio diversification efforts, expanding our investments into other asset classes and into the international financial markets, and also in our liquidity management. In 2019, we increased our international exposure to 8.5% from 3.5% in 2018. Most notably, our international public equity holdings generated the highest returns to contribute 1.7 billion ringgit or 11.6% to our overall gross income in 2019. This was despite its small exposure in our total portfolio. During the year, we have also remained steadfast in our efforts to provide better customer service to our unit holders. We have improved our business processes, resulting in shorter waiting and service times across all our branches. Our My ASNB portal and app have also been enhanced to ensure that our services remain accessible to all our unit holders wherever you are. And during this MCO PKP period, an ASNB online redemption facility has been launched to enable easier access to funds by our unit holders, although we encourage you to stay invested for the long term. And while we are also cognizant of the need to provide for flexibility to our unit holders during these extraordinary times. More insights are shared in the annual report, and this is aimed at promoting a better understanding of PNB and ASNB amongst our unit holders and the public at large. I'm pleased now to share a depiction of our value chain through this video.
Permodalan Nasional Berhad. Established with a focused social mandate, PNB was created to build and encourage the participation of the Bumiputra in the nation's growth and wealth creation. To achieve this, PNB manages 14 unit trust funds on behalf of individual unit holders of ASNB, PNB's wholly owned unit trust management company. In addition, PNB also manages its own separate proprietary fund to complement and safeguard the unit trusts under our management. With 6 fixed price funds and 8 variable price funds under our stable of products, each fund is tailored to the needs of our unit holders, from their children's education, retirement, and everything in between, and benchmarked against the Maybank 12-month fixed deposit and the FBM KLCI. These funds are invested across borders and asset classes, covering public equity, real estate, private investment, fixed income, and cash, guided by a philosophy grounded in long-term fundamentals and operating within a robust investment process. With the explicit mandate to promote corporate sector ownership among the Bumiputra, investments have largely focused on Malaysia's strategic growth sectors. PNB has also recently begun venturing abroad as part of our strategy to diversify investments and manage risks across a larger spectrum. Every investment is guided by strict investment processes, with emphasis on Sharia tenets and principles. Our Sharia manual provides guidelines for responsible investing according to Islam, hence precluding investments in industries such as alcohol and gambling, among others. Additional processes provide the oversight, transparency, and accountability required to ensure PNB delivers on its promise of sustainable returns to all unit holders. Central to our aim to provide these long-term returns is our commitment in providing returns that reflect market conditions. Yields are derived strictly from the respective fund's realized gains, dividends, and other income, with regular impairment assessments conducted by independent auditors. All this so we can continue to deliver on our mandate to you as we have done for the last 4 decades. From Modalan Nasional Berhad, we remain committed to enriching the lives of Bumiputras and all Malaysians.
Ladies and gentlemen, 2019 is now behind us, but as we transition into 2020, we are venturing into an even more demanding environment. Developments that have brought unprecedented challenges to the world. The immediate measures that have been taken are focused on containing the spread of COVID-19 health pandemic and to save lives. The consequent economic disruption and damage arising from these necessary shutdowns have, however, been massive. This has prompted most countries to implement unprecedented policy responses. Over and above this, the turbulence in the oil market has further compounded the economic impact of the pandemic. As a consequence, global equity markets weakened significantly during this period. For this year, the IMF is projecting that the global economy will experience its worst recession since the Great Depression of the 1930s. The forecast is for the global economy to contract by 3% in 2020. On the domestic front, Bank Negara Malaysia forecasts that Malaysia's GDP growth is expected to be between plus 0.5% to a minus 2%. And amidst slowing demand and supply disruptions, the oil market has seen plummeting oil prices. Brent crude oil has slumped by 61.7%, posting a heavy impact onto oil companies and oil-producing countries. The Malaysian equity market has not been spared from these shocks. The KLCI declined by 11.4% year to date, almost twice the 6% drop in 2019. We are living in truly uncertain times. Nobody knows for certain when the pandemic will eventually end and even how the recovery will pan out, whether it will be a V-shaped trajectory or a protracted slow return to normalcy. the global economic recovery will depend on three important elements. Firstly, it will depend on how successful the world is in containing the pandemic. Secondly, it will depend on the effective implementation of the policy measures that have been announced. And finally, it will depend on how the post-economic shutdown is managed and when a vaccine might be developed. In the immediate term, businesses are being heavily disrupted while earnings are adversely affected. As a consequence, unemployment is expected to increase. The associated uncertainty has also resulted in highly volatile financial markets. In this bleak financial and economic conditions, there is, however, some room for optimism. While the necessary economic pain to contain the spread of the pandemic may be intense and immense, it will, however, be temporary. Once the economic shutdown is lifted, economic activity can be reignited. In the immediate time frame, a recession may be felt before the recovery occurs. We therefore need to look beyond the immediate term. There are already encouraging signs in some countries, including in Malaysia, that have achieved some success in containing the pandemic. This has resulted in incremental lifting of the shutdowns. Knowing this, we need to prepare ourselves for the next phase, the economic recovery. We, however, need to recognize that we will be living in a new normal. Things will be different. Globalization would likely take a breather. There will be shifts and further optimization in supply chains. Network infrastructure will need to be upgraded. The digital economy will grow to become more important, and further automation that is taking place will reduce the need for human interaction. Social distancing and virtual working will become the new norm, reinforced by new hygiene requirements. We will also need to continuously balance between the economy and our safety. Indeed, navigating through the COVID-19 crisis has taught us several important lessons. We have learned that we are able to operate remotely at a high and at a greater speed. At PNB, our business continuity plan was activated even before the before the MCO or PKP was announced on 18 March as the pandemic began to accelerate. We started with split team arrangements, either at home or on site. As mentioned earlier, 97% of the PNB workforce are currently mobilized to work from home. Going forward, and in preparation for the new normal, we are introducing work from home as part of our flexible working arrangement option for our staff. While our immediate response to the pandemic crisis have done well to sustain us throughout this unprecedented period, we also now are preparing ourselves for the future. In venturing forward, our strategies as outlined in FOCUS4 takes on an even greater relevance in the face of these market upheavals caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The extensive midterm review conducted in 2019 has enabled PNB to gather critical in-depth insights and analysis of where we are, while taking into consideration the dynamics of our current environment. It has thereby sharpened the sense of our strategic direction in a more contextualized manner. This has formed the essence of the FOCUS4, which articulates 4 priority areas for PNB to facilitate sustainable growth and unlock value. It focuses on diversification, value creation, risk management, and organizational transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are truly living in a new normal with unparalleled challenges. PNB has stood our ground for more than 4 decades, and inshallah, we will successfully navigate through this difficult period and continue to deliver outcomes that are in the interest of our unit holders. While FOCUS4 aims to ensure that PNB is well positioned to navigate through these conditions, more importantly, it aims to ensure that PNB will be in a state of readiness with expanded capabilities to ride on the recovery when it occurs. To our unit holders, we remain fully committed to delivering our mandate to you in the years to come. Let me now hand over to our President and Group Chief Executive, Encik Jalil Rashid, to elaborate on our strategic plan in greater detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri, for sharing the highlights of PNB's performance in 2019 and for launching our new strategic plan 2020 to 2022, or FOCUS4. Next, may I invite our President and Group Chief Executive, Encik Jalil Rashid, to take us through the framework of FOCUS4. Dipersilakan, Encik Jalil.
Thank you, Tan Sri, and good afternoon, members of the media and our viewers today. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you are well, keeping safe at home. I'd like to begin by echoing what Tan Sri said about why we are doing this now. We have put in much effort recently to amplify and simplify our communication to our stakeholders. We realize that during a time like this, it is important to keep an open, honest, and timely communication with all of you to help you understand our aims and how we are preparing ourselves for the uncertain future. Notwithstanding this uncertain future, we at PNB can take comfort in the fact that we have a clear mandate and that it is to enhance the wealth of our unit holders. We have been delivering on this mandate over the last 42 years through the unit trust funds under our management, 14 in total, 6 of them being fixed price funds and are benchmarked against Maybank's 12-month fixed deposit, and 8 of them being variable price funds. For the variable price funds, we aim to achieve a second quartile performance. Why second, you may ask? It is because our funds pay dividends and that we need to constantly balance the relative performance of the fund with our need to pay out dividends. In addition, PNB also manages a proprietary fund that supplements and supports the returns of these unit trust funds, and it is through our proprietary fund that we invest in assets or ventures that require incubation before they start generating, which was a 6-year strategic plan with a goal towards becoming a world-class investment house. That goal remains. However, we did a midterm review 3 years into Strive 15 and studied what worked and what needed to be changed. Strive 15 was designed to build the desired infrastructure to enable PNB to diversify the investments. This included establishing some new teams, frameworks, guidelines, and structures that were necessary for us to invest internationally. However, we are now entering into an uncertain period where we need to be adaptable, quick, and spread our risk across borders. We laid out its impact versus the firm's priorities. We then streamlined some projects and asked ourselves, what are we good at and what do we want to be? It is with that we have decided to come up with a new strategic plan called FOCUS4 that will replace Strive 15. FOCUS4 sets our priorities to focus on 4 crucial high-impact areas. For the next 3 years, we will be focusing firmly on diversification, value creation, risk management, and organizational transformation. FOCUS4 will hone in on high-impact areas that are more attuned to the changing market environment. Adopting a shorter 3-year approach also provides PNB with the flexibility to be more responsive and adaptable to take advantage of opportunities against the fast-paced backdrop of current times. Diversification under our first focus area is targeted to build an all-weather portfolio for all the funds under PNB's management. We will strategically diversify our investments over a spectrum of global assets while increasing capital efficiency and crystallizing a more vibrant investment process. As Tan Sri mentioned earlier, we have made significant progress in diversifying our portfolio last year, and we will continue to build on this momentum. The goal is to optimize overall risk-adjusted returns in a persistently low-yielding environment that we're in. Not only will we be diversifying asset classes, but also subclasses underneath to capture specific sectors and geographies. The aim is to have various investment styles that can weather through different market conditions rather than to employ a single strategy. This will see us increasing our global exposure to 30% within the next 3 years. In an effort to deploy quicker, we will also engage external fund managers who are world leaders in these specific areas to manage on our behalf. This is to complement the existing in-house skills that we already have. Further to that, we have also put in place knowledge transfer plans that will see our people being seconded to these managers to learn about best practices, research, and the latest investment tools available out there. The risk that could delay our deployment target is the currency. Our receipts are in Malaysian ringgit, hence any deployment will be made carefully, taking into account the strength or weakness of the Malaysian ringgit. Under the second focus area, we aim to bolster the performances of our strategic companies. Their performances significantly impact our income and that of KLCI, given most are large components of the index. With this in mind, we have launched our stewardship framework that will institutionalize governance best practices. We want to be actively engaging companies, championing good corporate governance, and exercise our shareholding by way of proxy voting. Key components to achieving this are, firstly, ensuring our strategic planning is in order. Second, encouraging prudent capital allocation that will drive performance in the short to medium term. Third, improving accountability by encouraging companies to publish their KPIs transparently. Fourth, developing performance-linked remuneration for management. And fifth, advocating a robust succession plan for the board of directors and key executives of companies. Our stewardship framework also institutionalizes best practices for board of directors governance. Policies and guidelines surrounding board directorships and voting have been refined in our new voting guidelines. This will take effect beginning today and can be downloaded from our website. We also want to be a value-adding partner to our investee companies and minority shareholders. We will advocate on behalf of our investee companies and provide complementary expertise when required. Towards this end, a strategic investment council has been established to be chaired by me, consisting of all CEOs of our strategic companies. SIC, as it's known, is aimed to align interests and reducing duplication where possible, and serves as an avenue for us all to share best practices. We would also like this platform to discuss on talent development and how we can have greater mobility of people across our strategic companies in an effort to produce the next generation of corporate leaders. PNB will also be writing an annual shareholder letter to our strategic and core investment companies where we will detail our assessment of their operating performance. A generic summary of this annual assessment where PNB will analyze our investments by sectors and share our thoughts will also be made available to the public. This is in line with the practice of global leading investment institutions like BlackRock, with whom we have benchmarked ourselves. The third focus area involves around how we manage our risks. In the recent town hall with PNB employees recently, I have stressed on how everybody is responsible for risk. Internally, we have put risk management as KPIs for all our senior leaders and divisions to instill the importance of this. We will focus on developing a proactive risk culture across the organization and maximize technological capabilities to enable more effective risk monitoring and decision making. The components that will be emphasized in our enterprise risk management ERM 5-year blueprint are governance, framework, processes, digitalization, and resources. Enabling this, digital technology platforms will be utilized to develop a centralized system, embedding latest risk analytic tools and building out capabilities for automated risk management, monitoring, and reporting. As we dive deeper into international markets, there may also be need to have asset-specific risk specialists. The fourth focus area is our human capital. Enhancing communication capabilities and pushing the company towards becoming a high-performing and an outcome-based organization is vital. This initiative will focus on people and culture, governance and processes, digital and structures, and KPIs. To make this work, we will be working on our people's development, simplifying processes, going paperless, and relooking at KPIs and structure of teams. We will also be embracing a new set of values that encourages prudence, adaptability, collaboration, and excellence to achieve this. The outcome we want to achieve here, when these initiatives are successfully executed, is to become an employer of choice, with a flexible workforce, as we have articulated earlier, using state-of-the-art tools that is highly adaptable. We have aligned the goals and objectives under FOCUS4 with an implementation plan that prioritizes 50 initiatives that are spread across the 4 focus areas. The key enabler here that binds everybody, technology-wise, we are now in automation stage where we are replacing systems, introducing newer tools, and setting across a culture change across the organization to adopt digitalization. Only when we have automated in 3 years' time will we begin the next phase, which is innovation. Integral to this execution is our 1,600 employees at Team PNB, who will all play a role, our senior leaders as focus champions, taking leads on each of these focus areas, and our people as change agents in ensuring an efficient delivery of these targeted outcomes under FOCUS4. As with every strategic plan, the success is in the execution. For this, we will track the progress of each initiative at all levels to ensure a fast feedback loop to enable us to further improve on our delivery. This will include at the management, board committees, and board of director level. Given that we have shared this plan of ours with you, we intend to keep you informed of our progress in a transparent manner. To conclude, I'd like to share with you what we envision success to look like for us and various stakeholders involved. With a 3-year focus, FOCUS4 will ultimately position PNB as an investment institution with a risk management, high performance, and corporate stewardship. Our high-performing people and organizational culture are expected to thrive in this technology-enabled environment, an optimal operating model underpinned by best-in-class governance practices. As PNB grows from strength to strength towards realizing our vision to become a distinctive world-class investment house. How will success look like? Success for our unit holders will be in the form of sustainable and competitive investment returns. We'll be more engaged in our communication and will offer a much more enriched digital customer experience. For corporate Malaysia, we are targeting for PNB to emerge from the execution of FOCUS4 as a stewardship champion with the strategic companies that deliver best-in-class performances. We will also look forward with a view to contributing to our nation building, since as an institution with a social mandate, our role goes beyond the generation of returns alone, but also in areas such as education, talent development, and heritage preservation. We must always be commercial if we are to continue playing our social role. Once again, I thank you all for joining us today, and I would like to end today's presentation with a video on our new strategic plan, FOCUS4. Thank you.
Permodalan Nasional Berhad. The global economy and financial markets evolve constantly, and to fulfill our vision in becoming a world-class investment house, it is vital that PNB can adapt to these changes as well. Global events in the year so far have challenged us to stabilize amidst the crisis that has brought the world's economy to a near standstill. Markets worldwide will continue to tread carefully as governments and health experts navigate uncharted territories and prepare to embrace the new normal. With so much uncertainty, long-term planning has become almost impossible. It has, however, propelled PNB to be more agile in exploring new opportunities and addressing the challenges ahead. As a long-term investor mandated to enhance the economic wealth of Bumiputras and all Malaysians, PNB is ready to weather the storm and thrive in this new environment. With this in mind, we have developed a new strategic plan to take us further in the next 3 years. FOCUS4, as it is called, will steer PNB for the next 3 years and focus on 4 crucial high-impact areas: diversification, value creation, risk management, organizational transformation. Firstly, to truly harness the power of optimizing risk in a low-yield environment, FOCUS4 will strategically diversify our investments over a spectrum of global assets, while increasing capital efficiency and crystallizing a more vibrant investment process. FOCUS4 will also see us leading more active and structured engagements with our investee companies to ensure sustainable and long-term value creation. Our newly established stewardship framework will institutionalize governance best practices and strengthen organizational health. PNB will strengthen its risk management and cultivate a proactive risk culture across the board and maximize technological capabilities to enable more effective risk monitoring and decision-making. Finally, 2020 onwards will also see PNB embracing the very foundations of its organizational transformation, in particular those integral to people and culture, process, digital, structure, and KPIs. It is a natural evolution of everything we have worked towards thus far as we prepare for what may change in the months and years ahead and ensure we deliver on our mandate of paying sustainable returns that has remained unchanged for the past 4 decades. FOCUS4, strengthening our resilience and strategic direction.
Sums up PNB's new plan to take us forward to 2022. Thank you, Encik Jalil, for elaborating on FOCUS4. Yang berbahagia Tan Sri and Encik Jalil. I will now proceed to the Q&A session. We have received quite a number of questions from the media, and these have been grouped together and paraphrased for brevity. Let me start with the first question. What is PNB's investment strategy amidst the current tough environment? Would PNB focus more on preserving cash, investing or selling, and why?
Yes, thank you for that question. PNB is a long-term investor and focuses on fundamentals, identifying the mega shifts that are taking place. In the current environment, market conditions are expected to remain volatile, and we will continue to diversify our portfolio to a wider number of asset classes, thereby avoiding market concentration. The market weakness is, in fact, an opportunity for us to accumulate good quality stocks at lower valuations, and our current cash pile of about 13.4% puts us in a good position to take advantage of this prevailing market mispricing. Our strategic plans outlined in the FOCUS4, which you've just heard, is therefore timely in taking us forward in this environment.
Thank you, Tan Sri. The next question reads, what is PNB's plan to weather the current downturn of the financial market to maintain its performance?
Well, most countries will not be immune to the economic impact of this unprecedented health shock. The world has responded with a massive range of policies to provide relief and to support the economic recovery as the pandemic recedes. At PNB, we believe that our diversification efforts across more asset classes in diverse geographical areas have helped us remain resilient. Our more robust risk management has also enhanced our awareness of the risks. And we have also intensified our efforts to optimize our liquidity management. As I mentioned earlier, we sit on quite a significant amount of liquidity, and that gives us potential to respond to opportunities as they emerge. And during this period, yes, I would like to invite Jalil to give a few words on this.
Yeah, if I may add to Tan Sri's point, I guess in this current environment, we're also mindful that our companies could record lower earnings this year due to the fall in demand and the weaker business environment across most industries. So this will impact the dividend income stream from our companies. To enhance their potential, we have already put in place the stewardship framework that we talked about that aims to boost the operating performances of these strategic companies. The idea is to make these companies leaner, more focused, with good capital management. And we believe that as one of the biggest asset managers in the country, it is also our responsibility to push and strive for greater corporate governance and strengthen the institutional capability that could move corporate Malaysia up certain levels. And of course, improving their potential long-term returns as well.
Thank you, Cik Jalil. And the next question is still linked to the current tough environment. What are the sectors, markets, or asset classes that PNB would focus to invest in amidst this current tough environment?
Yes, so
Yes.
so I'll take this. So the PNB is typically sector agnostic, except for the non-Sharia sectors that we never invest in. But the current pandemic has also opened up a lot of increased opportunities for us for the technology sector, communications, healthcare, as the world embraces remote working, as well as the increased focus on health and personal hygiene, which are here to stay as part of a new normal. So it's not going to go away anytime soon. However, the flip side is that there are sectors such as airlines, leisure, tourism, which will be impacted until the search for this vaccine yields some sort of results. In the interim, social distancing will be practiced. These sectors are likely to remain weak for a while. That's what we envisage. As PNB ventures internationally as well, our universe is now wider across different asset classes, such as private equity and real estate, that we didn't have so much of several years ago. In real estate, for example, we have already invested even before the pandemic began in sub-segments of the real estate sector, such as logistic and warehouse assets, that today are beneficiaries because of the boom in online shopping globally as people stay home. We started first in Europe and are now looking at similar opportunities like this in Asia as well. Similarly to that, on private equity as well, we've been looking to diversify away from developed markets to look at perhaps some opportunities in Asia as well.
And we move to the next question, Tan Sri, Cik Jalil. Will PNB perform better this year than last year?
Well, undoubtedly, 2020 will be an even more difficult year than 2019 due to the global spread of the pandemic. Several factors will determine our potential to perform during the year. And this includes, firstly, that the world and our own country will not experience a second wave of the COVID virus, of the pandemic. Secondly, as that the announced policies will take into account that have been announced will be effectively implemented. And thirdly, that the most importantly, of course, in the announcements is that the issues relating to the SMEs and the rising unemployment will be addressed. And thirdly, of course, that consumers would commence spending. So these are the external environment. And for PNB itself, we've described in our FOCUS4 already in great detail how we will manage the diversification of our portfolio and then managing the risks very rigorously so that we are mindful of the developments that we will encounter. And then, of course, the performance of the companies that we are invested in. And so this is important. It should also be recognized that actually 30% of our portfolio is in the financial markets, which include real estate products, and also relates to our liquidity management. But secondly, 60% of our investment is in the strategic companies, and therefore they are an important part of our effectiveness in able to generate income. And we have explained in very clear terms in our FOCUS4 how the greater engagement and the actions that will be taken to raise the potential of these investments. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may add to Tan Sri's point, we don't have a crystal ball about how the outlook is going to look like, given that the situation is so fluid and changing quite rapidly. But when in investments there are controllable and uncontrollable factors. The controllable being what is within our hands, which is our ability to do sufficient amount of research, pick out good quality investments that will do well over periods of cycles. But what we do know for certain is that it is going to be weaker numbers ahead in the next few quarters as the result of the shutdown and subsequent impact starts showing. However, the situation is quite fluid. Many countries are still in lockdown stage. Key will be how quickly these economies recover and resume their business activities. But we have consistently over the last few months at least reiterated that our returns will be dependent on such a recovery and on market conditions, as we are not immune to what happens in global markets.
Okay, we turn now to FOCUS4. We have a couple of questions on FOCUS4. With the introduction of FOCUS4 at a time like this, there is much uncertainty that lies ahead. How will the plan change or adapt to market conditions?
Yeah, so one thing that is constant with us that will not change is our governance process, which remains robust. And that's something that as unit holders, you should all be proud of, that there is sufficient checks and balances and good control mechanisms. But what will change with us is our approach to investment. That needs to be fluid. It needs to move in tandem with how the market behaves. For example, we will be introducing quant-based investing like smart beta to reduce the volatility of our equity funds. We will also be investing in real estate funds globally rather than just purely focus on brick and mortar assets. This will also give us an opportunity to co-invest alongside other funds globally, an opportunity we may not necessarily have if we attempt to buy brick and mortar assets alone. Beyond that, we're also expanding our investments via external fund managers. To my earlier point, in emerging markets where we had limitations in the past due to research coverage. What has changed now is that we are now working alongside these managers to complement our existing skill set. Now, FOCUS4 was always designed to ensure that the entire firm is adaptable and our direction is focused, as the name suggests. This is amplified in the new set of values that we are inculcating within PNB. Which means we are remembering our mandate, we're finding solutions, we're breaking down silos, and raising the bar higher in terms of excellence and expectations.
And what does this mean for the Strive 15 6-year plan, Cik Jalil? Will PNB be able to meet the targeted 350 billion AUM by 2022?
Yeah, so Strive 15 was always designed, when it was designed, we had in mind that it was to build the necessary infrastructure required for PNB to start investing internationally. This meant this included setting up of new fund structures, establishing new teams, frameworks, guidelines, Here, the assumption was that we will continue growing by 4.5% annually to hit the AUM of 350 billion ringgit. Now, under FOCUS4, we are focusing on quality rather than quantity, and it has been designed to ensure that we are delivering the performance we expect from our funds. So the key is performance, and the belief that I personally have is that if we continue performing well and delivering the performance and giving the sustainable returns, unit holders will continue investing in us, and then the AUM growth will be a byproduct of that. However, we must remind everybody that we are a voluntary savings fund, right? We're not mandatory. We are also a function of how the economy is and whether people have extra savings to invest. And given the current global circumstances, we may see unit holders dipping into their savings as well. So we do not want to harp too much on what our fund size could look like, but instead focus on ensuring we hit the performance hurdle we have set ourselves. We're focusing on what we can control. The fund size is an after result of that. And as Tan Sri as well mentioned, we are pleased to have surpassed the 300 billion ringgit mark for our assets under management. It's now about 312 billion ringgit as of end of last year. About 20 years ago, this was about 30 billion ringgit. So we've grown about 10 times over the course of 20 years, and that's quite an admirable feat. All asset managers would love to see the AUM grow. I think that's a natural instinct. For us, the size of AUM represents the continued confidence of each of our unit holders that we serve. Hence, our focus will be on operational excellence and performance.
Thank you, Jalil. And we turn to the situation we have currently at hand, COVID-19. Will there be changes in asset allocation? Will COVID-19 disrupt PNB's plans to expand its investments abroad? Tan Sri?
Well, PNB has a strategic asset allocation framework which guides us in the decision-making process and in setting our optimal long-term capital allocation targets. It is an essential part in achieving better diversification of risk from the portfolio of investments across different asset classes. And our strategic asset allocation approach has shifted our future growth journey towards that of an asset allocator, with the diversification of our investments of our portfolio as a key driver. We are also a long-term investor, so that the configuration of our asset allocation will not change impulsively. Thus far, our plans to invest abroad is very much still remains.
I think just to add to Tan Sri's point, I think no, this is a great opportunity to enter markets, because valuations are currently depressed, especially if we have a high conviction on certain stocks and sectors. I think this is where the difference is when, as fund managers, we see an opportunity in markets like this. And as mentioned, we will determine our overseas deployment. What will determine our overseas deployment is the strength and weakness of the Malaysian ringgit. And if there reaches a point that it becomes too expensive for us to deploy, we may have to slow down our deployment. We have done analysis internally to kind of determine the range at which we could deploy further funds into the international market, and at which point we need to perhaps scale that back a bit. Nonetheless, we'll still continue finding pockets of opportunities. Now, in anything that happens, in any crisis, in any downturn, there are always sectors and countries that become beneficiaries. And it is up to us to grow our coverage, footprint and research capabilities, so we're able to identify these pockets of opportunities.
The next question is still on COVID-19. Stock markets were hit by the coronavirus pandemic, and this is likely to impact PNB's return for this year. What is the target dividend payment for ASB unit holders for this year? And is there a minimum dividend that PNB has to pay to its unit holders?
So we have consistently delivered competitive dividends, right? We've got 14.3 million unit holders. That's about nearly half the population of Malaysia, with a total cumulative income distribution of about 200 billion as of end of last year. for all the 14 funds since inception. So we've done extremely well here. So in terms of target dividend, we've always strived to exceed the performance benchmark, which is the 12-month fixed deposit rate. And this is what we have committed to in our prospectus when we launch our unit trust. We were always set up, 42 years ago, to be conservative and not take excessive risk. And the idea was always that we will give a very accessible unit trust for all Malaysians to invest in that will pay a higher rate than the fixed deposit. But despite the challenging years before this, PNB has been able to still deliver the competitive returns as a result of realized gains arising from much more better performance of our strategic investments. But I must emphasize as well that the income distribution to unit holders have taken into account relevant impairment of investments. We live, I guess, today in a very different world that has been fueled by abundance of liquidity. And this has resulted in the past 2 decades or so in the investment horizon, markets have changed exponentially, and as such, yield curves have also followed these trends.
Tan Sri, Encik Jalil, we will be taking the last 2 questions. Would PNB be pressured to help fund or finance Malaysia's economic stimulus or budget at all?
Well, PNB is committed to doing our part to support the nation and extending a helping hand during this difficult period. In early April, we contributed a total of about 23 million to support the COVID-19 relief efforts, including for acquiring of medical equipment. And in addition, to help reduce the burden of businesses affected during this period, that is businesses associated with PNB. PNB is providing a rental waiver to all SME tenants in PNB's properties for the next 6 months from the start of the MCO. We see our role as being best served to generating a reasonable and competitive return to our unit holders and to contributing to nation building through our investments in companies in various sectors of the economy.
Thank you, Tan Sri. And that takes us to the last question for this session today. Our media friends are very curious on the progress of Merdeka 118 following the movement control orders. Have there been any arising problems?
So currently, the percentage of completion for the project is currently at about 50%. The building has reached 111 floors, 111, prior to MCO. So we've got 7 floors more to go for the central core structure. As per the requirements of the MCO, the site was shut down during the first 3 phases of MCO. Preparations are now being made to resume work, which should begin this week. Based on a prelim review that we did, there could be an additional 2 to 3 months extension of time that includes the period no work was allowed during the MCO, as well as an adjustment phase that we're currently undergoing right now, where we are imposing strict guidelines on temperature screening for our workers, staggering start hours to manage the crowd, and also social distancing at the site. So I guess it will take some time to have an operating pattern and rhythm there. And the idea is that we aim to catch up as much as possible with the time loss. But in terms of construction materials, many are sourced locally, and the overseas sourced ones have already been in storage, enough for us to do works over the next 6 months or so. So we can start work immediately.
Right. I would like to add, of course, that with this we expect that the project will be completed by late 2021, and I would like to mention that PNB will be moving there eventually when it is completed, and we will take up 17 floors, and we will be operating 4 floors of the observation deck, which is going to be proving very exciting, where you can see most of Kuala Lumpur, and there will be many exhibits there on the 4 top floors. Well, I guess that concludes our question and answers. So I would like to say some concluding remarks.
Thank you, Tan Sri, and thank you to Jalil. Thank you to members of the media for your questions. Those will be all the questions that we can answer for now. All remaining questions will be responded to via email after this. If you have additional questions, please do email me, aimeaziz@pnb.com.my, or my colleague Halim Abdul Halim at pnb.com.my. As all of you are aware, the press release and other relevant materials have been shared with you earlier under embargo for your kind reference. The press release and annual report 2019 will also be up on our website, www.pnb.com.my. Other materials, such as infographics and videos, will be available on our social media platforms today. So do follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as well as our President and Group Chief Executive, Encik Jalil Rashid, on his Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter accounts. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, may I now invite our Group Chairman to close the session. Tan Sri, if you please.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's undeniable that we are in a very challenging time for our country and for the whole world. And we are facing financial, humanitarian, health, and economic challenges all at the same time. And uncertainties will remain even after this pandemic subsides. Therefore, it is imperative that we take collective responsibility to help flatten and contain the speed of COVID-19 in our country. In our fight against this invisible enemy, it is essential that we maintain safety and the well-being of ourselves, our families, and the community at large. As we return to work and our daily routine, it is important that we consciously adapt to the new normal, where we practice social distancing and hygiene discipline as our daily routine for the coming days. I would also like to remind our unit holders to review their investment priorities carefully and not make any decisions hastily. In our part, we are ever ready to support you to extend our services that are needed through these difficult times together. Finally, on behalf of Pemodalan Nasional Berhad, I would like to thank all the frontliners and backliners who have and are continuing to work hard to keep us safe and secure during these difficult times. No words can ever describe how grateful we are for all your sacrifices. Our thoughts and our prayers are always with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Yang Berbahagia Tan Sri. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our session this afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be virtually with us today. Thank you and have a great day ahead. Terima kasih dan Assalamualaikum.